Have you ever noticed how some people apologize even when they're the ones who've been hurt? There's something strange about forgiveness. We're told it's a virtue, a sign of strength, the highest form of emotional maturity. But what about the person who forgives too quickly? The one who accepts the apology before it's even offered? The person who's already explaining away someone's cruelty before the wound has stopped bleeding? You know who I'm talking about. Maybe you are that person. You forgive your friend for canceling plans at the last minute. Again. You forgive your partner for that comment that made you feel small. You forgive your parent for that thing they said at dinner that everyone else is still uncomfortable about. But you? You've already moved on. Already smoothed it over. Already made excuses for them in your mind. But here's the question that haunts the chronic forgiver. If forgiveness is supposed to set you free, why does it sometimes feel like you're the one in chains? Let's start with what this looks like from the outside. You are the reasonable one, the mature one, the person people can depend on because you never hold grudges. You're easy to be around because you don't make things complicated. You don't bring up the past. You don't keep score. When someone hurts you, you can already see their perspective before they've explained it. You understand they were stressed. You know they didn't mean it. You recognize they're going through something. And within hours, sometimes minutes, you've forgiven them completely. Your friends might even admire this about you. I wish I could let things go like you do, they say. You're so zen, so emotionally evolved. But here's the thing they don't see. The way you lie awake at night replaying the moment. The way that comment they made keeps echoing in your mind days later. The way you forgive with your words, but your body keeps the score. The tightness in your chest when you see their name on your phone. The small flinch before you hug them. The way you've learned to expect disappointment so thoroughly that you mistake it for wisdom. You forgive too much. And it's costing you something you can't quite name yet. So, what's really happening here? Why do some people forgive so readily that it becomes almost reflexive? The psychology behind this runs deeper than simple kindness. Research in attachment theory shows us that patterns of forgiveness often originate in childhood. If you grew up in an environment where love felt conditional, where approval had to be earned, where conflict meant abandonment, or emotional withdrawal, you learned something crucial. Your needs are negotiable, but the relationship is not. You learned that being upset was dangerous, that holding someone accountable might mean losing them. That forgiveness wasn't really a choice, it was survival. Dr. Harriet Lerner, a clinical psychologist who studies apology and forgiveness, points out that many people conflate forgiveness with reconciliation. But they're not the same thing. Forgiveness is an internal process. Reconciliation requires changed behavior from the other person. When you forgive too quickly, you're often skipping straight to reconciliation without requiring accountability. And this is where it gets complex, because you're not actually forgiving in the truest sense. Real forgiveness requires you to first acknowledge the full weight of what was done to you. It requires you to sit with your anger, your hurt, your sense of betrayal. It requires you to honor your own experience before you release it. But when you forgive instantly, you're bypassing the pain. You're spiritual bypassing, emotional bypassing, leaping over your own feelings to get to the evolved part, where everything's okay again. Except everything isn't okay, and some part of you knows it. Here's what's really happening when you forgive too much. You're managing other people's emotions instead of your own. Think about it. When someone hurts you and you immediately forgive them, who benefits most from that forgiveness? In that moment, you're taking responsibility for their comfort. You're soothing their guilt. You're making sure they don't have to sit with the consequences of their actions. You've become so skilled at this that you do it automatically. Someone says something cutting, and before they've even finished their sentence, you're already laughing it off, already making a joke, already saying, "It's fine, really." But the truth is, you're terrified of your own anger. Anger is a boundary emotion. It tells us when something is wrong, when a line has been crossed, when we need to protect ourselves. But if you learned early on that your anger was too much, that it made you difficult, or dramatic, or mean, then you learn to skip it entirely. To go straight from hurt to forgiveness without passing through the fire of your own righteous anger. Psychologists call this fawning, one of the 4 trauma responses alongside fight, flight, and freeze. Fawning is when you prioritize the other person's needs and comfort above your own, often unconsciously, as a way of keeping yourself safe. And here's what's fascinating. Neuroscience research shows that this pattern actually changes your brain. When you repeatedly suppress your emotional responses to maintain connection with others, you're training your nervous system to perceive your own needs as dangerous. Your brain starts to associate self-advocacy with threat, so you forgive, and forgive, and forgive. Not because you're especially kind, but because holding someone accountable feels more frightening than absorbing the hurt yourself. Let's talk about what this costs you. First, there's the obvious. People learn how to treat you. When you forgive someone without requiring them to change their behavior, you're teaching them that your boundaries are suggestions, that hurting you has no real consequences, that they can say sorry or not even bother saying sorry, and either way, you'll still be there. This isn't about being transactional in relationships. It's about recognizing that healthy relationships require accountability. When you remove consequences from harmful behavior, you're not being compassionate, you're enabling. But the deeper cost is what it does to you internally. Every time you forgive too quickly, you're sending yourself a message. Your feelings don't matter as much as keeping the peace. Your hurt is less important than someone else's comfort. You are not worth the discomfort of a difficult conversation. Over time, this becomes your truth. You stop being able to identify what you actually feel because you've trained yourself to override those feelings so quickly. You become disconnected from your own inner voice, that gut instinct that tells you when something's wrong. You might notice that you struggle to make decisions, that you don't trust yourself, that you feel foggy about what you want or need. This isn't a separate issue. It's directly connected to your pattern of over-forgiving. You've muted your internal alarm system so thoroughly that you can't hear it anymore, even when it's screaming. There's also the resentment that builds underneath, because you can intellectually forgive someone 100 times, but your body keeps the record. That friend who always cancels, you notice you don't reach out as much anymore. That partner who makes dismissive comments, you notice you've stopped sharing the vulnerable parts of yourself. That family member who crosses boundaries, you notice you've gone quiet around them, careful, guarded. You think you've forgiven, but really, you've just gone numb. And this is where it gets interesting, because the person who forgives too much often prides themselves on being understanding, empathetic, emotionally intelligent. You can see all sides of every situation. You have incredible capacity for compassion. But here's the paradox. You've extended that compassion to everyone except yourself. You understand why they snapped at you. They were tired. But do you understand why you felt hurt? Do you give that the same weight? You can explain their behavior with nuance and context, but can you sit with your own pain without immediately explaining it away? The truth is, over-forgiving isn't actually about forgiveness at all. It's about self-abandonment. Real forgiveness requires you to first show up for yourself, to say, "This hurt me. This was not okay. I matter enough to acknowledge when I've been wronged." Only then can you make a conscious choice about whether to forgive, whether to reconcile, whether to continue the relationship. But when you forgive reflexively, you skip the most important step, honoring your own experience. Here's what nobody tells you about chronic forgiveness. It's often rooted in a deep belief that you're not enough on your own. That if you make things difficult, if you hold people accountable, if you require them to show up for you the way you show up for them, they'll leave. And their leaving would confirm what you've always secretly feared, that you're too much or not enough, or somehow fundamentally unworthy of being chosen. So you make yourself easy to love, easy to hurt, easy to disappoint, because easy feels safer than risking rejection. But here's what's really happening. You're rejecting yourself first, before they even get the chance. Psychologist Dr. Kristin Neff's research on self-compassion reveals something crucial. People who struggle to set boundaries and who over-forgive often score low on self-compassion measures. They extend to others what they cannot give themselves: grace, understanding, patience. And maybe that's the real wound. Not what they did to you, but what you've been doing to yourself all along. The way you minimize your own hurt. The way you talk yourself out of your own feelings. The way you've convinced yourself that your needs are negotiable, that your boundaries are optional, that your pain is less valid than someone else's intentions. Let's go even deeper. If you forgive too much, there's often a specific moment in your history when you learned that your hurt was dangerous. Maybe you expressed pain or anger, and a parent withdrew their love. Maybe you set a boundary, and someone told you that you were being selfish. Maybe you were the peacemaker in your family, the one who had to smooth over everyone else's conflicts, and your role became so fixed that you forgot you were allowed to be the one who was hurt. Children are brilliant at adapting. When love feels unstable, they learn to stabilize it the only way they can, by managing their own needs, by becoming easy, by forgiving before there's even an offense to forgive. And that brilliant adaptation that kept you safe as a child, it's now keeping you trapped as an adult, because you don't need to do that anymore. The people who truly love you won't leave because you have feelings. The relationships worth keeping are the ones that can handle your honesty. The love you're actually looking for doesn't require you to shrink yourself to fit. But knowing this intellectually and feeling it in your bones are two different things. The pattern runs deep. It's wired into your nervous system. It feels like who you are rather than what you learned. So what changes this? Not another person finally treating you right. Not finding someone who doesn't hurt you. Not becoming so good at forgiving that eventually you transcend being hurt at all. The shift happens when you start treating yourself the way you've been treating everyone else. What if you gave yourself the same compassion you automatically extend to others? What if you were as quick to forgive yourself for having needs, for feeling hurt, for wanting more than you're getting? What if the next time someone hurts you, you paused? Not to punish them, but to check in with yourself. To ask, what do I actually feel right now? Not what I should feel, not what makes this easier, but what do I actually feel? And then, here's the revolutionary part. What if you honored that feeling? What if you said it out loud? That hurt me. I don't think that was okay. I need you to understand how that landed. This doesn't mean becoming unforgiving or holding grudges. It means making forgiveness a conscious choice rather than an automatic reflex,